how we doing?
Take it in full.
Guys, how we doing? You all from 29 Bolt Soup? All right, how we doing here? Where are we seeing? I'm going this way? Okay. Oh, I see. All right, well, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you all for being here, and thanks especially to the Marines from 29 Palms for being here, for serving their country, and providing some much-needed security. As a matter of fact, I just heard from a couple of law enforcement officers, basically, thank you. Thank you to the President for sending in the DOD officials, for sending in the soldiers and Marines, because unfortunately, a lot of these federal buildings were under very serious threat. I heard about a lot of that during my tour here today, and the reason I'm here is I just wanted to hear from the law enforcement officials themselves, the state officials, the local officials, but also the federal officials, what's actually going on here on the ground. I think there's some good news, and the good news is the rioting has gotten a lot better. But the bad news is, as I heard from everybody, unfortunately, the soldiers and Marines are still very much a necessary part of what's going on here because they're worried that it's going to flare back up. And what do I mean when I say flare back up? I think it's useful to take stock of what actually happened in the city of Los Angeles over the past couple of months. So first of all, to set the table, we have a public official in Gavin Newsom and Los Angeles Mayor Karen
Hi,
Vance, who
come
over
on
the past
in.
few years have acted.
For those of us with service animals,
This is
preparation is
about
key.
the
Ensure
Los
your buddy always has
Angeles
their
Border
ID.
Control raids, the U.S.
but for illegal
Marines,
immigrants to break the law, to come
Trump.
to our country, and to receive generous public assistance for having done so. What has that done? That has created an illegal
Using the
immigration
military
crisis, of course, facilitated by the
in the
policies
U.S.
of the Biden administration, and there is perhaps nowhere where that crisis has fallen harder than in the great city of Los Angeles. And, you know, I landed, when I saw this city, when I was driving through to come to this FBI building, all I could think about is what a great American city Los Angeles is, and what a great tragedy it is that we have allowed illegal immigration and rioting to destroy, I think, one of the great gems of the American family. Now, these guys surrounding me represent the U.S. Attorney's Office, the Federal Bureau of Investigation. They represent immigration enforcement, and of course, we just met some Marines who represent the Department of Defense. All of these law enforcement officials were necessary because what happened is, in response to the basic federal action of enforcing immigration law, you had local officials and radical left-wing agitators who actually encouraged violence, who facilitated violence and rioting in the great city of Los Angeles. What happened here was a tragedy. You had people who were doing the simple job of enforcing the law, and they had rioters egged on by the governor and the mayor, making it harder for them to do their job. That is disgraceful. And it is why the president has responded so forcefully what happened in Los Angeles. Number one, because we've got to enforce our borders and get so many of these criminals out of our country to begin with. And number two, when you have violent agitators who make it impossible for the law enforcement to do their job, it is necessary to protect them and to defend them. We have to remember that the Friday that the riots started, before there was ever a single National Guardsman, before the President of the United States had sent in additional federal resources, you had law enforcement officers who were being captured and beaten by violent mobs egged on by Gavin Newsom and other officials. It was necessary to send the National Guard to stop that process, to bring some order back to this great city, and to make it possible for the people's president to enforce the people's immigration law. That's why we're here. That's why these guys are standing beside me. That's why we have close to 5,000 soldiers and Marines from the Department of Defense. It's because we've got to enforce the law. The president takes that very seriously. I'm happy to take a few questions, but before I do, I just want to send a message to all of the law enforcement, local, state, and federal, who frankly I think are suffering from a bit of a morale problem because they've had the local government in this community tell them that they're not allowed to do their job. I just want to let you know, from the president, the vice president on down, this administration stands with you. We're grateful for the job that you do every single day. We know that we wouldn't have a border were it not for your hard work and for your efforts, and we're going to keep on fighting for you and keep on standing with you every step of the way. I heard today Border Patrol officials tell me that they feel like the local government is sicking violent mobs on them when they go out to the community to enforce the nation's immigration laws. Can you imagine what it's like to be a federal official doing your job, doing the job the President of the United States ordered you to do, and have a mob come after you for following orders and for enforcing the American people's laws? I think it's disgraceful that we've ever gotten to this place in this country, but thank God we've got a president and an administration that is pushing back against lawlessness. We're going to keep on doing it every step of the way. So thank you to the Border Patrol. Thank you to the soldiers and Marines. Thank you to the U.S. attorneys. Thank you to the FBI. Thank you to all of you for doing what is necessary to enforce the laws of the American people. We are grateful to you, and we'll keep on fighting for you. Now I'll take a few questions.
Mr. Vance, would you say that Gavin Newsom is endangering law enforcement here in California, and what should he be doing if he was protecting them?
Look, I would absolutely say that Gavin Newsom is endangering law enforcement. The law enforcement officials themselves tell me as much. That when they go out, let's say you have a Border Patrol official who needs to go out and arrest somebody, maybe a violent criminal who's also an illegal alien. When that Border Patrol agent goes out to do their job, they said within 15 minutes of them trying to do their job, they have protesters, sometimes violent protesters, who are in their face, obstructing them, preventing them from doing their job, and endangering their lives. Why do they have that? Because those people have been egged on by local officials. Gavin Newsom and Karen Bass, by treating this city as a sanctuary city, have basically said that it is open season on federal law enforcement. They have treated Border Patrol and border enforcement as somehow an illegitimate force instead of what they are, which is the American people's law enforcement trying to enforce the American people's laws. So when Gavin Newsom encourages violence and rioting, when he encourages people to get in the face of our great Border Patrol officers, he is absolutely endangering the lives of federal enforcement. He's absolutely endangering the lives of mothers and daughters and fathers and sons who have been sent here to do a simple thing: enforce the law. And thank God they're willing to do it despite the fact that the local leadership of this community has made it harder on them and has in fact endangered their lives as they go about to do their important work.
Your reaction to the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, their decision yesterday? Just want to get your reaction to that.
Yeah, well, it's interesting that for the past couple of weeks, Gavin Newsom has said that there's an illegitimate effort to send federal resources to secure a city that he refuses to secure. And what the Ninth Circuit said yesterday is completely legitimate and proper use of federal law enforcement. The president has a very simple proposal to everybody in every city, every community, every town, whether big or small. If you enforce your own laws and if you protect federal law enforcement, we're not going to send in the National Guard because it's unnecessary. But if you let violent rioters burn great American cities to the ground, then of course we're going to send federal law enforcement in to protect the people the president was elected to protect. And I think what the Ninth Circuit said very clearly is when the president makes a determination that you've got to send in certain federal officials to protect people, that determination was legitimate, and the president's going to do it again if he has to. But hopefully it won't be necessary. We don't want to send these great Marines to cities like Los Angeles. We only do it if we have to protect federal property and to protect the lives of our great law enforcement folks.
Funded by Democratic groups who are releasing the addresses of ICE agents
Yes.
in hotels around here.
Well, you know, it just drives home. I was actually shocked to hear this, and I didn't realize this until I was in the command center earlier talking to some of these great officials, that oftentimes you have far left agitators who are posting the names, the addresses, even the family members of some of our law enforcement in an effort to harass them, antagonize them, and even threaten their lives. And what do I take from that? What I take from that is that you have a very small group of people who are so against the idea of border enforcement that they're willing to threaten and endanger the lives of their fellow Americans who are enforcing the law. And something else I take from it is that Gavin Newsom and Karen Bass have got to stop this craziness. Every single law enforcement officer I talked to today, every single one of them said they feel like the local leadership, the mayor and the governor, are encouraging these far left agitators. What is the justification for this? What is the reason for this? There is a broad bipartisan consensus that we ought to have border enforcement and we ought to enforce our nation's laws. So why do you have far left agitators egged on by local officials who are encouraging these agitators to harass and to threaten our border patrol. You have it because of a lack of common sense. These people need to be stopped. These people need to be told that if you threaten a law enforcement officer, you're going to go to prison for it. And that's exactly what the Trump administration, that's the message that we're sending. But look, we could do so much better, and we could have such an easier pathway for these federal law enforcement officers if the local leadership wasn't egging this on. And I think that's the great tragedy. What I see here today is the great tragedy when a mayor and a governor encourages their citizens to harass and endanger the lives of our police officers and our law enforcement officers. It's heartbreaking to see, and thank God we've got great people who are willing to persevere despite it.
Another question, Mr. Vice President. There's been back and forth about whether raids will be going on in agricultural businesses and restaurants. Could you tell us if that's going to continue or not?
Well, the president's made 2 points on this that I think are very worth emphasizing. Number one, if you are in this country illegally, you are at threat of deportation, because that's what it means to enforce the country's laws. If you've come here illegally, the policy of the Trump administration is that you shouldn't be here. You should go back and then come through proper channels if you so desire. But the president has also said that he wants to focus our critical and short supply law enforcement resources on going after the really bad guys, on the violent criminals, on the rapists, on the drug cartel members. We've still got a lot of those people in our country, and that's where the president wants to focus law enforcement resources, and that's what he'll continue to do.
Democrat lawmakers who keep getting handcuffed. The New York Times just did a story. They keep getting handcuffed, suggesting that the Trump administration is cracking down on Democrats. Can you comment on that?
Well, I was hoping Jose Padilla would be here to ask a question, but unfortunately, I guess he decided not to show up because there wasn't the theater. And that's all it is. You know, I think everybody realizes that's what this is. It's pure political theater. These guys show up, they want to be captured on camera doing something. They want to be able to go back to their far left groups and to say, look, me, I stood up against border enforcement. I stood up against Donald Trump, when all they're really standing up for is for drug cartels to run rampant over our country and sex traffickers to be able to continue to traffic little kids into our country. That's what you're doing when you stand against border enforcement. So I think these guys, we ought to laugh them out of the building. We ought to call them out for doing what they're doing, which is grandstanding. And if they want to work seriously on border enforcement and on keeping their communities safe, the Trump administration's door is wide open. But they're not doing that. They love the grandstanding. They hate law enforcement because they hate the idea of the United States of America having a border. It's a disgrace, but it is what it is. We'll do one more question.
Sure. Just another thing. Do you think that the administration has been too aggressive with the deportation efforts? Like, are non-criminals getting caught up in the dragnet as well?
No, look, I don't think that we've been too aggressive at all. I mean, first of all, any time that a mistake has been made, we correct that mistake very quickly. But the unfortunate reality is that Joe Biden let in 15 to 20 million illegal aliens into this country, and there is no way for us to actually get those unlawful, illegal immigrants out of the United States of America without some serious law enforcement. And that's what we've been trying to do. It's not too aggressive. It's not, not aggressive enough. It's just the right approach to make sure that we're enforcing our country's border laws. We have to remember, 100,000 Americans die of fentanyl overdoses brought in by the Mexican drug cartels. We've got a terrible sex and human trafficking problem because of what these cartels are doing at the southern border. The president deserves great credit because after 45 days, you saw illegal border crossings draw to a small fraction. Illegal border crossings down over 99% under President Trump's leadership. But unfortunately, because Joe Biden was president for 4 years, we've got a...
Are there any bats? No. Are there any sticks? Nope. Sure.
It's time to push your limits. That was easy. The Subaru Crosstrek Wilderness. Adventure on the edge.
Karen Bass, they decided to go to war against the people trying to keep our communities safe. That's a disgrace. That's a terrible commentary on their qualities as leaders. But the Trump administration is going to keep on standing for the American citizens and for American law enforcement. Thank you all. Great to be here. And thank you to you guys. Reese, how we doing? Guys, how we doing? You all for 29 volts too? All right, how we doing here? Where are we seeing? I'm going this way? Okay. Oh, I see. All right, well, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you all for being here, and thanks especially to the Marines from 29 Palms for being here, for serving their country, and providing some much-needed security. As a matter of fact, I just heard from a couple of law enforcement officers, basically, thank you. Thank you to the President for sending in the DOD officials, for sending in the soldiers and Marines, because unfortunately, a lot of these federal buildings were under very serious threat. I heard about a lot of that during my tour here today, and the reason I'm here is I just wanted to hear from the law enforcement officials themselves, the state officials, the local officials, but also the federal officials, what's actually going on here on the ground. I think there's some good news, and the good news is the rioting has gotten a lot better. But the bad news is, as I heard from everybody, unfortunately, the soldiers and Marines are still very much a necessary part of what's going on here because they're worried that it's going to flare back up. And what do I mean when I say flare back up? I think it's useful to take stock of what actually happened in the city of Los Angeles over the past couple of months. So first of all, to set the table, we have a public official in Gavin Newsom and Los Angeles Mayor Karen Bass, who over the past few years have actively encouraged illegal migration into this community, have strained public services, have strained law enforcement, and really have offered generous benefits, not to American citizens, but to illegal immigrants to break the law, to come into our country, and to receive generous public assistance for having done so. What has that done? That has created an illegal immigration crisis, of course, facilitated by the policies of the Biden administration, and there is perhaps nowhere where that crisis has fallen harder than in the great city of Los Angeles. And, you know, I landed, when I saw this city, when I was driving through to come to this FBI building, all I could think about is what a great American city Los Angeles is, and what a great tragedy it is that we have allowed illegal immigration and rioting to destroy, I think, one of the great gems of the American family. Now, these guys surrounding me represent the U.S. Attorney's Office, the Federal Bureau of Investigation. They represent immigration enforcement, and of course, we just met some Marines who represent the Department of Defense. All of these law enforcement officials were necessary because what happened is, in response to the basic federal action of enforcing immigration law, you had local
Hey,
officials,
Joseph. Hey, y'all.
radical
This
left-wing
thing came on and I ain't even know it.
actually encouraged violence, who facilitated violence and rioting in the great city of Los Angeles. What happened here was a tragedy. You had people who were doing the simple job of enforcing the law, and they had rioters egged on by
I'm in
the
there
governor
taking a
and the
good
mayor,
old bubble
making it harder
bath.
for them to do their job. That is
22 minutes.
disgraceful.
My goodness.
Why the
Okay,
president
hold
has
on.
responded so forcefully what happened in Los Angeles. Number one, because we've got to enforce our borders and get so many of these criminals out of our country to
Hold
begin with. And
on.
number two,
Let's get
when you
to it.
have violent agitators who make it
California has
impossible for the law
always.
enforcement to do their job, it is necessary to protect them and to defend them. We have to remember that the Friday that the riots started, before there was ever a single National Guardsman, before the President of the
California has
United States had sent in
always.
additional federal resources, you had
The
law
history have
enforcement
been a little
officers who were
different from
being
other
captured and
states.
beaten by violent mobs egged on by Gavin Newsom and
Let's
other
see. Hold
officials.
on.
It was necessary to send the National Guard to stop that process, to
Hey,
bring
everybody who
order
came
back to
in
this
while
great
I
city, and
was
to make it possible for the people's
bubble
president to
lathered
enforce
the bubble
immigration
bathing.
law. That's why we're
I didn't know that this
That's why
that
these
came
guys are
out.
standing beside me.
My
That's why
bad. Thank y'all for hanging in there. Let's do this. Okay, so let's see what this governor was talking. Is this the same
Trump
one?
is now in his first month in office, and we want to know how you think he's doing as president. You guys know how I think he's doing, but Democrats and
right corner of your screen. Want to take it in full
I
for you
would
here. We
be
are expecting,
surprised
as you
if
can see there, J.D.
in
Vance. He's officially there in Los
yeah,
Angeles.
that's
He's
that's
there
what
walking up to the mic to make some of these remarks.
that's what he
Let's
said
listen
he
in.
was gonna do.
And thanks especially to the Marines from 29 Palms.
No, not you. I don't want to hear you. Hold on. I thought it was the lady. Where old Sanders? Hold on. Lord, I don't. Baby, if this camera turned around by itself right by now. Ooh-wee, man. Okay, let's hear what he has to say.
Nursing homes who are all.
It's a crisis, y'all. I just wonder why he didn't implement some of these things when he was in office before. Why now? When he was on the golf course. Bernie Sanders.
Well, thank you all very much for being out here tonight. This is quite the crowd. And let me thank our musicians. Let me thank Veronica Guerrero, a great public school teacher. Sereth Garcia, who talked about what Medicaid means to her life. Leonard Aguilar, who understands we've got to build the trade union movement in this country. Kendall Scudder, who understands that for many years the Democratic Party in Texas has been run in a terrible way. It's got to be turned around, and he intends to do that. And lastly, let me thank my friend Greg Kassoff from Austin. Texas, you have given us one of the outstanding members of the U.S. Congress, and we appreciate that very much. This is a tough time. And it's not just individuals.
Hold on, y'all.
Tough time for McAllen.
Nursing homes who are already struggling.
Deny that for a second. And I hope tonight that we're going to have a serious discussion
time for McAllen.
about what's going on in our country and what's going on
Deny that
right
for
here.
a second. And I hope tonight
There's a lot of
we're going to
bad
have a
news,
serious
clearly.
discussion about what's going on in our country and what's going on right here.
There's a lot of bad news, clearly, in the fact that we have, as a nation today, more serious crises than we have ever had in the modern history of America. And if you're feeling a little bit overwhelmed, you're not alone. That's a feeling that is being experienced all over America. That's the bad news, but I'll tell you the good news, and that is in our fighting oligarchy tour that Greg has been a part of, and we've gone to, this is our 13th state, more than 250,000 people have come out. And just last Saturday, on the No Kings Day, millions
How
and
weird,
millions
Monkey
of
Fist.
Americans in every state of this country came out and loudly and clearly they said no to oligarchy, no to authoritarianism and picking people up off of the streets, no to kleptocracy and a president who's going to make billions of dollars off of his presidency, and no to legislation which will provide, if passed, hundreds of billions of dollars in tax breaks to the top 1% and make devastating cuts to the needs of working families. So that's what's going on in the country. And let me be more specific. You are now living in an oligarchic form of society. Some of you may have noticed when Trump was inaugurated, seems like 20 years ago, but it was just a few months ago, standing right behind him were the three wealthiest people in America, Mr. Musk, Mr. Bezos, Mr. Zuckerberg.
The #1 food for regular BMs, huh? Okay, let's see.
Fastest way to clear out stuck poop is by
Mr. Zuckerberg. You know those guys. And then seated right behind them were another 13 billionaires who Trump had nominated to head various major government agencies. So I don't have to tell you or the American people that today we have a government of the billionaires, by the billionaires, and for the billionaires. I don't have to tell you because Mr. Trump did already. Today in America, we have more income and wealth inequality than we have ever had in the history of the United States of America. Now, what I'm going to tell you doesn't get on TV too much and certainly not discussed in the halls or the floors of Congress. You got one man, our friend Mr. Musk, who owns more wealth than the bottom 52% of households in America. You hear that? One person owning more wealth than over half the households in America. You got in America today, top 1% owning more wealth than the bottom 93% of Americans. You got CEOs in America now making 350 times what their average employees make. So bottom line, you got the people on top, never in the history of this country have done better than they're doing it today. And it's not just income and wealth inequality. You got more concentration of ownership in America, in every sector of our society, whether it's agriculture or transportation or financial services. You got a few giant multinational corporations who control what is produced and, more importantly, the high prices for the products that you pay. Bottom line is that in the wealthiest country in America, in the history of the world, we have two Americas. One America, people on top, doing phenomenally well. But there is another America that I suspect the people in McAllen are very familiar with. And that is that while the 1% is doing extraordinarily well, there are millions and millions of families in Vermont and here in Texas who are struggling to pay the rent, struggling to pay for health care, struggling to put food on the table, to pay for child care and other basic necessities of life. And again, I hope you hear this because you're not going to see it on TV very often. Today in America, 60% of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck. You all know what living paycheck to paycheck is about? Yeah, I'm afraid many of you do. I grew up in a family that lived paycheck to paycheck. And what that means is you got people, mom, dad, working hard, sometimes 50, 60 hours a week, just trying desperately to bring in enough money to keep the family going. And people are worried. What happens if the rent goes up? What happens if the car breaks down? What happens if mother gets sick? And suddenly the whole thing could unravel because people have literally no money in the bank. They're living
Paycheck to paycheck.
And I'll tell you something else about paycheck. I want to ask you later on. I'm going to ask you. I want you to talk about what it means to live paycheck to paycheck. But here's something else that we don't talk about very much in America. As a nation, despite the huge amount of money we spend on healthcare, we live on average about 4 years shorter lives than people in other wealthy countries. Got it? That's bad. You know what's even worse? In America today, if you are working class, on average, you will live 7 years shorter life than the 1%. All right, somebody help me out on this one. Why is that? Why do working class people live shorter lives than people who have a lot of money? All right. Somebody raise their hand here. Yes, sir. Overwork, underpaid. And what does that contribute to? All right. The key word here is stress. Yes, ma'am, do you want to jump in? Food desert, not having access to decent food. What else you got? Yes, ma'am. Poor access to health care. Boy, you guys hit the nail right on the head. All right, inadequate wages, no vacations, people are overworked, not able to retire.
That's a good one.
You add all of that stuff up, and what doctors will tell you, nobody debates this, is that when people every day are worried about how they survive, what the stress does is really have a negative impact on their bodies, on their cardiovascular system, and on their minds, mental stress. That is the simple reality. And you add all of that stuff up, that is why working class people die 7 years earlier than the wealthy. Well, that's another issue we'll get to in a minute. And people in this country today are very angry. They're angry for a lot of reasons.
I'm sorry to hear that,
Sometimes
Southern
they
MO.
get angry at the wrong people for the wrong reasons. I want to get into that in a moment with your help. But what I want to say right now, when you talk about why people are angry, what is not widely known, I want you to hear this one carefully, as all of you can imagine, over the last 50 years, there has been an explosion in technology and an increase in worker productivity, right? It means that every worker here is producing a lot more than somebody in that position did 50 years ago. And yet, despite that huge increase in worker...
Can y'all double tap the screen? Get the likes up for me, please. If you're on your phone, just double tap the screen on your phone. If you're on your computer, hit the thumbs up and get the likes up for me. Thank you.
Productivity, the truth of the matter is that inflation accounted for wages, weekly wages, are lower today than they were 52 years ago.
This is Lux Pack Snow Crab Leg Meat by Prime Fish, the next generation of seafood luxury. It's like nothing you've ever experienced before. A revolution
are lower today than they were 52 years ago. Do you understand what I'm saying? So you got this huge increase in productivity. Where is all of that increased wealth going? And the answer is that over the last 50 years, there has been a $75 trillion transfer of wealth from the bottom 90% to the top 1%. And in the midst of all of that, stagnant wages, people not being able to keep up with inflation, cost of childcare exploding, groceries exploding, that in the midst of all of that, right now, literally today, I'll be back in Washington on Monday. We'll be dealing with this. Trump has brought forward with the Republican leadership a reconciliation bill, or what he calls his big, beautiful bill. And at a time of massive income and wealth inequality, this bill would provide $650 billion in tax breaks to the top 1%. It would provide more than $400 billion to large corporations who will use those tax breaks to bring in robotics and artificial intelligence, which will throw workers in this country out on the street. And the Republicans are paying for these huge tax breaks in an incredibly insidious and immoral way. Everybody here knows that our healthcare system today is broken, right? We got 85 million Americans who are uninsured or underinsured. What these guys want to do is cut Medicaid by some $700 billion and throw 16 million more Americans off of the health care they have. And it's not just individuals who would be impacted. Nursing homes, who are already struggling, receive 2/3 of their funding from Medicaid, and these nursing homes would either have to shut down or lower their quality of care. It would be, these cuts to Medicaid would be devastating for community health centers, and I fought very hard over the years to build community health centers all over America, including Texas, so people, regardless of income, could walk in and get the health care they need. This bill cuts in Medicaid, devastating not only community health centers, but the hospitals, to the entire healthcare system. And here's something.
Okay, y'all coming in, but y'all not tapping the like. Tap your screen to get the likes up as you come in.
School of Public Health in the University of Pennsylvania.
Truth doesn't matter.
And they estimated that when you throw 16 million people off of the health care that they have, people who are working class,
Southern Breeze.
people who are lower income, there will be an additional 50,000 unnecessary deaths.
Southern Breeze. I don't know why I keep saying Summer Breeze. Summer Breeze makes me feel fine. Blowing through the jazz.
Our healthcare system that would be devastated by this legislation. And this again is almost, you wonder the mentality, what world these guys are living in. All of us know that there are kids in Texas and in Vermont who go hungry. They don't get enough food, right? There are senior citizens who are dependent on Meals on Wheels program, congregate meal program, so they get at least one decent, nutritious meal a day. This legislation would cut $290 billion from nutrition. It is shameful, it is immoral, it is outrageous.
Now that I agree.
And I don't have to tell anybody here, the kids all over this country struggling, trying to figure out how they can afford to go to college or get the training they need to get a good job. This bill would slash education funding by $350 billion a year. Brothers and sisters, what we are dealing with is not only a massive attack on working families in order to benefit the very, very rich. And when I talk about the power of the rich, it's not only economic. I want you also to understand what a lot of people don't perceive.
From Kansas City to the capital city, Washburn University will surprise you. Public, prestigious, and affordable.
Of the rich, it's not only economic. I want you also to understand what a lot of people don't perceive. We have today a corrupt campaign finance system. All right? If you can believe it, I mean, it's almost hard to believe that this takes place in our country. Elon Musk himself spent $270 million to elect Donald Trump.
Facts.
And the reward that he got for electing Trump was to become the most powerful person in government, running all over, cutting the Social Security Administration, proposing to cut, if you can believe,
that's facts.
83,000 jobs.
That's facts. You can call it smoke screen if you want to. That's facts.
The American people know.
And then got mad at him and exposed him for being on Epstein's list as a PDF file.
Keep the promises we made to them. You don't cut back on the health care and the benefits that they receive.
You can't make this crap up. Exposed him for being on that list.
But what Trump is doing is
but y'all okay with that?
Waging an attack against the working class of this country. He is moving America very rapidly and dangerously into an authoritarian form of society. All right? We are supposed to have under our Constitution a separation of powers. You got an executive branch, you got a legislative branch, you have a judiciary. And this power-hungry man wants it all. He is usurping and taking away powers in the Congress. He is threatening the judiciary if a judge rules against him, threatening to impeach that judge. He is going after and suing media because some media has the courage to point out what he is doing. Now, this is a guy who every day is making vicious attacks against people he doesn't like, but when people attack him, he
start crying, he start whining, he start crying.
Okay.
He start crying.
Sensitive man.
He do start crying. He start having a tantrum.
He has sued Meta.
Don't expose me.
He has sued the Des Moines
Don't tell
Register
me.
because he didn't like a poll.
Don't see
that
me
they
for who
did.
I really am.
And right now, he is waging a major lawsuit against 60 Minutes and CBS.
That's the truth.
Because he didn't like an interview they did with Kamala Harris. He is going after universities in America because he doesn't like the courses they teach. He is going after law firms because they represented clients he didn't like.
Tell the truth, shame the devil.
And now, right now, in McAllen and other parts of this country, we're seeing what authoritarianism is about in its ugliest way. We're seeing people being stopped on the street, being picked up at their workplace, thrown into vans and taken God knows where without due process. Grabbing people, throwing them into a van is what takes place in dictatorships.
Facts.
Maybe it takes place in Russia or North Korea, but it's not supposed to happen in America, and we are going to fight back on that. major point that I want to make is that the overwhelming majority of the American people do not support Trumpism.
Hey, we are receipts. Hey, somebody else I thought I saw.
They do not believe that we should have a government run by billionaires. Some of you may recall a speech Abraham Lincoln gave on the Gettysburg battlefield in 1863. And you know what he said? He looked out on this battlefield where a terrible battle had taken place in the fight against slavery. And he looked out there and he said, what we owe these men, and thousands died on that day. Many were wounded and died later. He said, we owe them a vision which says that America will have a government of the people, by the people, for the people. That's what we believe.
That is the truth. That's true. What's the lie, Dave Clark? That is not a lie. That's the truth. Please don't come in here lying. That's not a lie.
Difficult times.
That is what it said. It said that before his ass even got in office. What are you talking about?
The abolitionists in the 1840s, 1850s, that struggle. We've gone through the terrible depression in the 1920s, where 1930s, where unemployment was like 25%. Got into
that's what he doing, though.
Totally unprepared to fight.
So what did he say? You said that's not what he believed. What does he believe?
Asia. We have
what does he believe?
For decades to fight for
what does he
rights.
Believe? I need to know what you think he believes. Or are you just talking? What does he believe? Hi, Caesar.
To end discrimination against.
Dave, what does he believe? Since you running your mouth.
The gay community.
What does he believe? Yeah, what does he believe? You co-signing it. What does he believe? And I'm going to pause until you tell me. Because you can't just come over here running your mouth. We need the facts. We need to, what does he believe? You speaking for somebody. You speaking for him. You eating all up in his butt. What does he believe? He believes that rich need to stay in power. Man, shut up. Bye. Bye. Get you up out of here. You talking all that shit and you ain't said nothing. That's the same thing he's saying. You robbing people to stay in power. Fuck you mean? Shut up. Get up out of here. The same thing. He just breaking it down. You don't want to hear it. So you started co-signing. With our facts. Get you up out of here. It's too late for your foolishness.
This is an ad, and I'm a prescription benefit manager.
And I done took my bath and getting ready for bed. Baby, please hit the like button.
We bring you
please.
Fun with a kick. Kansas City, Kansas is the place for
bye, Dave.
Excitement. Enjoy.
To create a health care and the benefits that they receive. But what Trump is doing is not just waging an attack against the working class of this country. He is moving America very rapidly and dangerously into an authoritarian form of society. All right? We are supposed to have under our Constitution a separation of powers. You got an executive branch, you got a legislative branch, you have a judiciary, and this power-hungry man wants it all. He is usurping and taking away powers in the Congress. He is threatening the judiciary if a judge rules against him, threatening to impeach that judge. He is going after and suing media because some media has the courage to point out what he is doing. Now, this is a guy who every day is making vicious attacks against people he doesn't like, but when people attack him, he is very sensitive. His feelings get hurt. Okay? Very sensitive man. So he has sued ABC, he has sued Meta, he has sued the Des Moines Register because he didn't like a poll that they did. And right now he is waging a major lawsuit against 60 Minutes and CBS because he didn't like an interview they did with Kamala Harris. He is going after universities in America because he doesn't like the courses they teach. He is going after law firms because they represented clients he didn't like. And now, right now, in McAllen and other parts of this country, we're seeing what authoritarianism is about in its ugliest way. We're seeing people being stopped on the street, being picked up at their workplace, thrown into vans and taken God knows where without due process. Grabbing people, throwing them into a van is what takes place in dictatorships. Maybe it takes place in Russia or North Korea, but it's not supposed to happen in America, and we are gonna fight back on that. A major point that I want to make is that the overwhelming majority of the American people do not support Trumpism. They do not believe that we should have a government run by billionaires. Some of you may recall a speech Abraham Lincoln gave on the Gettysburg battlefield in 1863. And you know what he said? He looked out on this battlefield where a terrible battle had taken place in the fight against slavery. And he looked out there and he said, what we owe these men, and thousands died on that day. Many were wounded and died later. He said, we owe them a vision which says that America will have a government of the people, by the people, for the people. That's what we believe. Now, this country has gone through difficult times in the past. Fight over slavery, the abolitionists in the 1840s, 1850s, that struggle. We've gone through the terrible depression in the 1920s, where 1930s, where unemployment was like 25%. Got into World War II, we were totally unprepared to fight two wars, one in Europe and one in Asia. We have struggled for decades to fight for women's rights, to fight for civil rights, to end discrimination against the gay community, to create a nation in which all people can live together with justice. And we have had some good successes over the years. But where we have not succeeded is in the economic struggle. I want all of you never to forget, not only that you are living in the wealthiest nation in the history of the world, but with so much new technology out there, the truth of the matter is that all people in America should have a decent standard of living.
Facts. Facts.
We live right now with a corrupt campaign finance system, and the implications of that system is that Congress, day after day, does things that the American people doesn't want it to do and doesn't do what we want it to do. And the reason for that is you have these billionaires out there. You got Musk saying to the Republicans, if you vote against my tax breaks for billionaires, we're going to primary you, we're going to throw you out of office. And on the Democratic Party, you got big fundraisers say, if you stand up and vote for ending funding for Netanyahu's horrible war in Gaza, we are going to primary you. And right now, you're seeing cowardly members of Congress who are refusing to stand firm and say, no, we are not going to go to another war in Iran. We got 800,000 Americans.
We respectful over here, Ivan.
People can't afford food. They can't afford health care.
We respectful over here.
Billions more fighting a war in Iran. But what that means is the most important political issue. It's not a sexy issue, but it is enormously important. We have got to end this disastrous Citizens United Supreme Court decision.
Thank you.
It is not a democracy when billionaires buy elections. And instead of giving tax breaks to billionaires, which is what Trump wants, our demand is that when the rich have never had it so good, they're going to start paying their fair share of taxes.
Well, that's fair. Ain't nothing wrong with that.
There are millions of workers in this country who are trying to make it on 12, 13, 14 bucks an hour. And I don't care where you live, you can't make it on those starvation wages. We're going to raise that minimum wage to at least 17 bucks an hour.
That would be good.
And what workers increasingly understand is they're not going to be able to negotiate for decent wages, decent benefits, decent working conditions without a trade union. And that's why we got to make it easier for workers to join unions.
Hold on. I'm out of juice on that one. Hold on.
Terrible depression in the 1920s, where 1930s, where unemployment was like 25%. Got into World War II, we were totally unprepared to fight two wars, one in Europe and one in Asia. We have struggled for decades to fight for women's rights, to fight for civil rights, to end discrimination against the gay community, to create a nation in which all people could live together with justice. And we have had some good successes over the years. But where we have not succeeded is in the economic struggle. I want all of you never to forget, not only that you are living in the wealthiest nation in the history of the world, but with so much new technology out there. The truth
please hit the like button. People are coming in, but not hitting the like button.
Should have a decent standard of living. We live right now with a corrupt campaign finance system. And the implications of that system is that Congress, day after day, does things that the American people doesn't want it to do and doesn't do what we want it to do. And the reason for that is you have these billionaires out there. You got Musk saying to the Republicans, if you vote against my tax breaks for billionaires, we're going to primary you.
I thought it was higher than 725. It ain't been 725 in a minute.
You got big fundraisers say, if you stand up and vote for ending funding for Netanyahu's horrible war in Gaza, we are going to primary you.
I think Chick-fil-A is like $20 an hour.
Right now, you're seeing cowardly members of Congress who are refusing to stand firm and say, no, we are not going to go to another war in Iran.
They just fell all the way forward, didn't
We
it?
got 800,000 Americans sleeping out on the street. People can't afford food. They can't afford health care. We do not have to spend billions more fighting a war in Iran. But what that means is the most important political issue. It's not a sexy issue, but it is enormously important. We have got to end this disastrous Citizens United Supreme Court decision. It is not a democracy when billionaires buy elections. And instead of giving tax breaks to billionaires, which is what Trump wants, our demand is that when the rich have never had it so good, they're going to start paying their fair share of taxes. There are
Why does it
millions
keep
of
doing
workers
this?
in this country who are trying to make it on 12, 13, 14 bucks an hour. And I don't care where you live, you can't make it on those starvation wages. We're going to raise that minimum wage to at least 17 bucks an hour. And what workers increasingly understand is they're not going to be able to negotiate for decent wages, decent benefits, decent working conditions without a trade union. And that's why we got to make it easier for workers to join unions. There are a number of Republicans who want to cut, if you can believe it, cut Social Security. Do you know what? This is, again, an unbelievable fact. Some 22% of seniors today in America are living on $15,000 a year or less. Can anybody explain to me how anybody in America, let alone a senior, can make it on $15,000 a year? Nobody can. Nobody can. So we're not going to cut Social Security. Our demand must be to expand Social Security benefits by lifting the cap on taxable income.
I agree. But he paying his taxes, though.
Years ago, well, not so many years ago, workers.
So that means that the people he talking to himself.
You know what that is?
He's okay with paying his taxes.
I know the younger people don't even know what this is about, but it means.
So it don't matter how many houses he got, long as is he include himself in paying higher taxes.
Guaranteed.
He can have 50 houses. I wouldn't care.
As
long as you pay your taxes.
Pension, you knew exactly what it was. It was a defined
and stop robbing the poor to stay rich.
Do right now. We got to strengthen Social Security, but we have to make sure that every worker in America has the kind of pension that he or she deserves. The United States of America today is the only major country not to guarantee health care to all people. Do you know that? One country. Love you to visit us. I live in Burlington, Vermont, 50 miles away from the Canadian border. Somehow, in Canada and in countries all over the world, they have determined that health care is a human right, not a privilege. The function of today's broken and cruel healthcare system is not to provide quality care to all. It is to make huge profits for the insurance companies and the drug companies. And our job, and this is not a radical idea, it's not just Canada, it's all over Europe, it's in countries in Latin America. Our job is to make sure that we have a healthcare system that provides quality care to every man, woman, and child as a human right.
Hi, Carla.
And there's another issue coming down the pike which is going to be a huge issue, and that is the explosion of robotics and artificial intelligence. The reality is that most of the jobs that you guys have that exist in America are not going to be there in 10 or 15 years.
They're going to be replaced.
Changed. And right now we're beginning to see the kinds of layoffs that I fear will happen. Now, technology and artificial intelligence and robotics are not bad unto themselves. If you're doing dangerous work or dirty work, and a machine comes in and can do that work for you, there's nothing wrong with that. The issue that we have got to resolve is who benefits from this new technology. If worker productivity goes up because of this technology, it must be workers who benefit, not just the owners of the corporations. And this is a huge issue that we're working on right now. Well, let me just wind down my remarks, and then I want to take some questions or comments and just say this. These are tough times for our country. And we are taking on what I call them oligarchs. These are people who have more wealth than you could imagine. I mean, they're not billionaires, they're multi-billionaires. They have tens of billions of dollars. And I think what we have to understand, we are facing in this country, as all of you know, serious problem in Vermont, I'm sure it's here as well, addiction, drug addiction problems, problem right here, overdoses and all that. You have people who are addicted to drugs, we have people addicted to alcohol, etc., etc. What these people are addicted to on top, and I mean this seriously, they are addicted to it. They are addicted to greed. They want more and more. Everybody wants to live comfortably. Everybody wants to make money. But for these people, there is no end in sight. They're prepared to destroy Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, in order to get even more wealth and more power. And the only way we stop them, what they got is incredible power, unlimited resources, they own the media, etc., etc. But we have one thing that they don't have. We have the people. But that doesn't mean anything if we are not organized.
Emergencies can strike at any time. That's why it's crucial to be prepared. Create a support system of people.
But that doesn't mean anything if we are not organized. What Trumpism is about, by the way, and this is true of demagogues historically and all over the world right now. You know how they flourish? Do you think Trump and his friends are going to go around and say, vote for us so we can give massive tax breaks to billionaires and cut Medicaid? That ain't what they're talking about. All right, what they do is come up with quote-unquote enemies. often people who have very little political power who are minorities. This goes on all over the world. It's always gone historically. 40, 50 years ago, there were candidates running for office who says, okay, white folks, those black people are going to take your jobs. Folks, those gay people are taking over your school system. Jews are doing this. Latinos are doing that. They always pick on a minority group. Our job is to break through that, to bring our people together. And when we stand together, we can win. But that is what demagoguery is. Instead of saying, well, you know what, maybe the problem with America is the fact that you have billionaires with uncontrollable greed who are prepared to destroy working people to become even richer. That's not what these guys are going to tell you. They're going to say, oh, the problem with America is all these undocumented people, and we got to get rid of them, blah, 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 blah. All right? And we've got to bring our people to understand, among other things, that during COVID, you know who was picking the food and processing the meat and are working in nursing homes? It was undocumented people. And the answer is not to have ICE agents picking people up off the streets. The answer is comprehensive immigration reform and a path towards citizenship. So these are tough times. They're tough times in so many ways. But I believe from the bottom of my heart that if we stand together, if we do not let Trump and his friends divide us up by the color of our skin or where we were born or our sexual orientation, if we stand together, we can not only defeat Trumpism, we can in fact create the kind of nation that the working families of this country deserve. All right, I want to ask you a question right now, and I'd like somebody to raise their hand, maybe come up here. Let's talk about immigration. Let's talk about what's going on in McAllen. Who wants to come on up here and say a few words on that, or raise their hands at least? Got a mic? All right. Who wants to talk about that? Danny? Okay, right here? All right, we got a mic for you. 1 second. Okay. Hold the mic in your hand. Okay. Tell me what's happening. Hold it. You can hold it. Let him hold it.
Can I hold?
You can hold it.
Is that okay? Well, Senator Sanders, first of all, thank you so much for coming down to the border. But to be real, we're in the state of crisis. I have personal friends, family members. There's a lot of us here, but there are thousands of our friends and family members that wouldn't even drive here because they're afraid to drive in the streets at night. Mm-hmm. I know people working, domestic workers, people that work in restaurants, they're not showing up to work. That have, kids in our public schools, they're not sure if they're gonna drive them to school this fall. So I don't know if I have a question, but I just wanted to really bring forward the urgency, how scared people really are right now.
Hi, Rizbo.
We didn't really feel it into this administration. I know there's been a lot of talk about fear, but it's really never been this urgent like this time around. And I'm wondering what we could do with senators like you, like Greg Kazar. What can we do to protect our people right now? I know there's a lot of Know Your Rights movement going on, but what can we do with leaders that have the power that you do to start to better protect our people in this moment of crisis?
Well, I think, here's what I don't have the magic answer. This is what I think. First thought, the American people are increasingly disturbed by what they are seeing on their TV screens. All right, it's one thing to say, I am going to get rid of a drug dealer or a violent criminal who came to this country illegally. And people say, yeah, that's fine, get rid of that person. It's another thing to go after somebody who's been working on a job, paying taxes, working hard for 10 years, and say, we're going to throw that person out. And it's an interesting thing. Some of you may have noticed it recently. You have large employers in agriculture and in meat processing. They're saying to Trump, you know what you're doing. You want to throw all of these people out. The price of food in America is going to double. That's what the employers are saying because they know who is doing the work. So I think the answer, and again, I am in a minority on this, but the answer has got to be immediately to stop this business of people being arrested without due process, thrown into detention centers. That is not, I believe, what most Americans want. And the polling is now becoming clearer, by the way. Again, what they will use, the rhetoric they will use is we're throwing out these violent criminals. So people say, good, do it. But when you go after people who have lived in this country for a long time, worked hard, pay taxes, live by the rules, that is not working so well for Trump. So we gotta figure out a way to stop ICE from what they are doing as soon as possible. All right, other comments on this? People, I want to say on this is, I know, as Danny mentioned, this is very much on people's minds. Am I correct? All right. Yes, I see a young man right here.
So I wanted to say thank you for coming.
Oh, excuse me. Just give it to him. He can hold it. Okay.
I just wanted to say thank you for coming down because many politicians, they can just get elected and stay over there in office. But I appreciate that you guys are from far away and nonetheless coming down. What my concern is that there's a lot of misinformation within the media. That the Republicans, some of them who might want to stand up against Trump, are afraid of it because he threatens them by saying that he's going to primary them.
Yes.
The law firms, as you mentioned, law firms that might be able to sue him are being silenced. And so it's becoming an autocracy where Trump has all power. And my fear is that what is it that we can do to stop that as the people of the country? And what is it that the government officials like yourself, that instead of it being three separate branches, it's becoming just himself controlling the other branches? What is it that maybe you guys can do to hold him accountable still?
Well, this is why I am here. And thank you very much. You know, I believe in democracy. I really do, in my heart of hearts. You disagree with me, that's fine. That's what America is supposed to be about. Make your point. You want to run against me? Run against me. But what you're going to have to move to Vermont to do that, but that's all right. But what is happening now, and this young man made the point.
A tight-knit college and a city of opportunity. Washburn offers the best of both worlds. Close?
Do I have to ask y'all every time to double tap when y'all come in? Double tap the screen, get the lights up. Thank you.
Republican member of Congress in Texas or anyplace else, and in your heart of hearts, you understand how
double tap the face of your phone
would be, right? And you think it's really dumb to give tax breaks to people who don't need it. And you got up and you stood that. The next day, Elon Musk or somebody else would say, you are finished politically. We're going to primary you. And that is where we are as a nation right now. Now, the reason I am here, and where we're going after we're here, we're going to Louisiana. I'm going to be right in the district of the Speaker of the House who helped write this bill. And believe it or not, that guy represents, it's not like he represents, you know, Speaker Johnson doesn't represent some wealthy community. He represents a low-income working class community. And the reason I'm going, why am I in Texas? Why am I going to Louisiana? Why am I going to Oklahoma? To tell people there to stand up and put pressure on their elected officials. So they're going to have to make a decision. Is it just their campaign contributions? Or are they going to have to listen to people who understand what's going on and are going to throw them out of office if they do the wrong thing? So that's kind of what the reason you're asking me what I'm doing. That's why I'm here, is to mobilize people in Texas, Louisiana, Oklahoma. These are conservative states. But my strong guess, you go out in Texas, anyplace else, and you say to people, do you think it's a good idea to give tax breaks to billionaires and cut Medicaid? 90% of the people will say no. But they don't know what's going on, and our job is to mobilize those people, and that's what we're doing right now. All right, other questions on let's stay on immigration for a moment if we can. Anyone else want to say a word? I see a woman straight in front of me. Yes, thank you. Let's get a mic. We'll get your mic. Just let her have it.
Hello. Senator Sanders, thank you for coming to South Texas. My name is Gabby Zabaleta, and I would like to ask the Democratic Party to take the narrative of immigration and to stand for us. Because we are workers, we're good people, and if they do not take the narrative and start writing immigration reform, the Republicans are going to continue to call us names and berate us, and that's not fair. So please tell the Democratic Party to stand up and also take some of the risk along with us. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I mean, I am, as it happens, I am an independent, the longest serving independent in congressional history. But I caucus with the Democrats, and I'm part of the Democratic leadership. I will convey your feelings to the leadership. But I'll tell you, there is, let me just say a word on this one. And maybe Kendall, the new chair of the Democratic Party here, has spoken about it. It is no great secret that 40, 50 years ago, if you went out on the street in Texas or Vermont, and you said to people, which political party represents the working class of America, no matter what their views are, so well, it's the Democratic Party. Who represents the wealthy and the powerful? Oh, it's the Republican Party. But the Democratic Party, many decades ago, had the brilliant idea that they would start accepting corporate money. And over the years, while they were strong on issues like women's rights and civil rights and gay rights and the environment, they in many ways turned their backs on working families. And all over this country, people are looking at the Democrats and they say, we don't believe a word you say anymore. You talk, but you don't deliver. And then they vote,
They got
maybe
bought
they
out.
throw the dice and say, I'm going to vote for a Trump. What I am trying to do is two things. We are trying to bring about fundamental reform of the Democratic Party. And right now, the Democratic Party, it is no great secret, is a top-down party controlled by billionaires and controlled by these consultants who live in another world. They don't know a clue what's going on. And our job is to force open. You know, the Democratic Party is not supposed to be a private club. And we got to break open that door and come marching in as working people, as young people, people of color, and say, you know what, this party belongs to us, not just billionaires. All right, look. I want to again thank everybody for coming out. And I appreciate Danny's point that we probably would have had twice as many people here tonight if people weren't afraid. And I hate the idea of people in this country being afraid to express their views in Congress, being afraid to walk the streets of McAllen. That is not what this country is about. But we have gone, let me just conclude by saying this. Again, these are tough times. These are the most difficult times in my lifetime, and I'm older than most of you. All right? So I'm not going to sugarcoat it. These are tough times. But despair is not an option. That is what they want us to do. All right? If we stand together, look, you know, the American people are decent people. They care about each other. The vast majority are not greedy people who want it all. Go around Texas. People think that health care is a human right. People think the minimum wage should be raised. People think we get billionaire money out of campaigns. That's what most people think. Our job is to stand together right now. It's to take over the Democratic Party. It's to take on the greed of the billionaire class. It's to create a country of compassion and, dare I say, of love. rather than one of greed. And I hate you because you came from a different country or you're a different religion. That is not what this country is supposed to be about. We're going to turn it around. Thank you all very much.
Love, sweet love, is the little thing, but they just too little while.
Thank you so much. Hey, thank you, Hartford. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you, guys. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, Connecticut. I appreciate you. Thank you for the lumbar support. And Heather, I do have to just be clear about this whole UConn thing.
I'm sorry.
Coach Ariyama, like, we had a room for him in the White House. I will point out that while I was in office, they just kept on winning. And I picked him about 4 or 5 times. So, you know, 1 year I get it wrong and suddenly everybody's all on me about it.
Hold on, let me get it fixed.
Much respect to the Huskies. Please.
But it is nonetheless an honor to have you here at the Connecticut Forum, and thank you all for coming tonight. Shall we dive into it?
Let's go. Let's talk.
So
let's chop it up, as they say.
So let's start off the top. You are both a historic figure and a historical actor in one of the most fraught times in American history. And in your book, A Promised Land, you wrote about the conflict between working for change within the system and pushing against it, wanting to lead, but wanting to empower people to make change for themselves, wanting to be in politics, but not of it. What did that mean for you in your early career, and how has it changed? How did it change when you were president, and how do you think about that now that you're out of office?
Well, I've talked about this publicly before. I was not someone who, as a young person, said, I want to be president. I wanted to be a basketball player, architect. There were a bunch of different things. Politician was not on the list. The way I came into it, I was inspired by social movements. I was inspired by, in particular, the civil rights movement that I had been too young to participate in. My role models were people like Bob Moses and Diane Nash and the Freedom Riders, and then, after I'd started community organizing and then went back to law school, this is a moment when solidarity is rising in Poland, right? And then the Berlin Wall is coming down, and Tiananmen Square is happening, and the people power in the Philippines, and so you're seeing a sense of ordinary people rising up and taking control of their lives and overthrowing oppressive structures and systems. And so that's what excited me. But what I also recognized,
why you didn't do something just for
smart professors
us.
like you.
You can't do you can't do stuff just for black people. You can't. There's no way. There is no way he could have got away. And also, y'all have to understand, there the government, Congress, all of that has to approve it. He can't approve stuff on his own. But he was for equality for all people, not just black people.
What you came to recognize is
So that's where we went wrong, thinking that he was supposed to just do something for black people. No, absolutely not. That is not a president.
And tenacity of generations.
That is not a
freedom fighters
president.
And the civil rights movement and Dr. King, but it was
No.
in the end also Lyndon Johnson. As flawed and tragic a figure as he was, in a lot
And
of
what
ways,
he did, he didn't get credit for that. I mean, it's just never enough. So no, I never expected for him just to do something just for black people.
background
No.
and his politics,
Absolutely
things like
not.
that, and then say, you know what, at this moment in history, I'm going to help make this happen. That was important too. And figures who aren't famous in the Justice Department who made sure that
Everybody
the federal government
had
weighed in on the side of
insurance when
equality
he
and
was
freedom.
in there. You know, it's just a lot of things that he did that he
that,
don't
I
get
think,
credit for.
continues
So
to
I'm
be
gonna
the
leave that
recipe
alone.
for change
But never
when our
expected for
democracy is
him just to
working.
go in there and do something just
I
for
do
blacks.
believe the
Like
most
what?
important office in a democracy.
All black people get a raise. I mean, like, I mean, what? I'm not being
change
facetious.
happens because-
I'm just trying to get into the mind. What did black people expect for him to do just for black people? Absolutely, class. No, nothing. They couldn't find nothing on this man to tear him down. But yet and still, we still find something wrong with him. No, nothing. Yeah, well, we got to do better. We got to do better. Oh, we got a black man. He gonna do everything for the black people. No. No, absolutely not. No. I definitely don't agree with that. I do agree with him for equality. So that means when he helped one, he have to help all. That's just my opinion.
Overcome.
I can't worry about them. I can't worry about them. I can't worry about them. He has a job to do. And if he just would have did something for black people only, then he would not have been doing his job. And I'm glad he represented well. No scandals, no nothing. No. I don't care what they get away with. That don't have nothing to do with him. So you want him to play revenge. You want him to just get in office, get this job, and then seek revenge. No. Absolutely not. No. No.
You know, the constraints of his
This man has integrity. And what you're saying is not integrity. So that means that the people who did it, they didn't have integrity. He has integrity. And he's solid with it. So just because they did it don't mean he gonna do it or I'm gonna do it or none of that type stuff. No. He is his own man. That was his job. And he took his job serious. And let's be really, 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 really clear. It was not the black people who put him in office. If we're going to get technical. No. But I'm going to leave that alone because people don't like the truth.
It's outstanding. You know,
It's a part of equality. Who they having sex with, that's between them and God. That has nothing to do with the president of the United States. So if they got special protection, they got equality. They got rights. It was about equality. Who they sleep with, the sins, that's between them and God. It wasn't his job. That had nothing to do with his job.
And TikTok's great, but
let me stop, because I'm sick of black people wanting black people to do stuff for them just because we black. I need for black people to work on black crime instead of LBGTB getting special protection. Stop, Southern Breeze. Don't do that, because I don't want to start looking at you funny. Because I thought you was of another caliber. But it sounded like you want handouts. I'm sick of black people.
What you came to recognize
I'm sick of them. I always want something for motherfucking nothing.
Or the Civil Rights Act was
killing one another. You should be more concerned about black on black crime. Have something to say about that. Have something to say about black people killing black people. I don't care about them. I care about my people. But I need for y'all to start caring about your people as well. And not just about what they get. Oh, they got more than we got. Well, that. You sound petty. Grow up. This is crazy. I cannot believe I'm having this conversation. And I was not expecting it from you. Because I put Barack Obama on here. He had a job for all people, not just black people. And I'm going to say it again. Black people didn't put him in office. Hell, majority of them don't even vote.
Tenacity of generations of freedom fighters. And the Civil Rights Movement, Dr. King, but it was, in the end, also Lyndon Johnson. As flawed and tragic a figure as he was in a lot of ways, his capacity to
y'all crazy as hell. Who was working on Chicago before he got in office?
And his politics as a Dixiecrat, and then say,
how about the parents of the kids who's doing all the crime need to work with their own kids? How about that? How about it start at home? People want everybody else to fix the problems that they created. I'm not the one to talk to about this. You know, just because I'm black don't mean that I think everything we do is right. I think all races have some sorry, trifling people. And I think a lot of the problems that we have going on in the cities are the fucking parents' fault. Not the president. The parents. They have time to do everything else but properly raise their kids. So y'all may need to back up off of this because y'all can't handle the truth. And I'm going to tell you the truth. It starts at home, not the presidential office. Raise your kids right. But we lack integrity. Because I can tell the way y'all typing, y'all don't have integrity. So it was not his place to work on the crime and the kids and all that stealing and killing. Again, there we go. Black on black crime. No. Baby, y'all may need to come another day because I don't agree with everything. I don't agree with that. Black lives need to matter to black people.
At this moment in history, I'm going to help make this happen. That was important.
We are suffering, about to suffer even worse because people got them bogus ass PPP loans, and y'all voted him back in office thinking y'all was gonna get them again. Y'all didn't care nothing about it's fraud. Y'all didn't care nothing about inflation going up. Cause how in the hell y'all think they gonna recoup that money? They gonna raise taxes. Inflation is going to go up, and they're gonna continue to get away with it. And the poor people who fell for the banana in the tailpipe is eventually gonna go to jail or lose whatever assistance they were getting. So y'all voted his ass back in, thinking, oh yeah, he dirty, he crooked, he this, that, or he for the people, cause he letting us get over. And now he coming back with a vengeance. So check yourself. Yeah. Get some integrity. These people lack integrity. And raise your own fucking kids. Respectfully. And then the crime will go down. There, I said it.
And figures who aren't famous.
I'm black and I'm proud too. But I'm not going to make excuses and blame everybody else and expect for everybody else to do what you need to do.
That, I think, continues to be the recipe for change when our democracy is working. I do believe the most important and figures who overcome the the constraints.
And I'm sorry if I hurt your feelings.
Background.
But the truth gonna set you free.
Politics as a Dixiecrat, and then say, you know what, at this moment in history, I'm going to help make this happen. That was important too. And figures who aren't famous in the Justice Department who made sure that the federal government weighed in on the side of equality and freedom.
Equality.
And that, I think, continues to be the recipe for change when our democracy is working. I do believe the most important office in a democracy is the office of citizen. That change happens because ordinary people get together and reimagine what their lives could be and push on the system. But I also think that you have to have people inside that system that can translate those impulses into laws and institutional practices. And you know, I've been on both sides of that equation, and I there have been times once I was in office where I got pushed. And
yeah, Congress blocks a lot of that stuff, but most people don't understand that. They just say, "Oh, he can pass this. He can change it." No, he can't.
And I pushed.
No, he can't.
That those who
and if people would do their research and get educated, they would know that. But they don't care.
For them to be able to explain,
they just want what they want.
You're not the only.
Okay, well.
Interest group. You're not the only constituency. There are other equities, and so we have to balance those equities. That's part of our job, and that, I think, is how a healthy democracy works. And unfortunately, I think both outside government and inside government, sometimes we get so cynical, or we want maximalist outcomes. We want all of what we want all the time, right now, and that's not how in a big, complicated, messy, noisy country like this, our democracy is going to work. Everybody has to figure out that push and pull that over time incrementally leads to extraordinary progress.
Can I push back on that?
Of course. See? It's happening already.
I'm curious in this moment in which we are currently living. For a lot of people, it feels as though the people who are speaking up and trying to change our society are not, in fact, being heard, and that change is coming not from outside the system, as you suggest, but rather from within the system.
Oh, well,
And I wonder
you were asking me about what it felt like for me coming up.
Oh, well, I
You
did
didn't
ask.
ask me about what the heck is going on right now.
That's two different things.
No. I did have. I did have. How has this changed now that you're out of office?
During my presidency, I didn't hear the out of office thing. It's changed a lot in the last few years. Yeah.
Well, but the I agree with you actually, but the premise that the way you create change in a democracy comes from below and not from above, I continue to think is solid. Are you rethinking that?
No, I'm not rethinking at all. But what we're also witnessing is that when the system is captured by those who, let's say, have a weak attachment to democracy, are not, I don't even think that's a controversial statement at this point. No, I'm actually being serious now. It was a controversial statement. Now it is self-acknowledged. I mean, if you follow regularly what is said by those who are in charge of the federal government right now,
Trump, you saw the news.
There is a weak commitment to what we understood, and not just my generation, at least since World War II, our understanding of how a liberal democracy is supposed to work. And when I say liberal, I don't mean left. I mean liberal in the sense of believing in rule of law and independent judiciary and freedom of the press and freedom of assembly and protest and compromise and pluralism. All those institutional norms and laws that were embodied in the Constitution imperfectly and then over time were expanded so that we had a basic understanding of like, I can't just be picked up on the street and hauled off to another country. That's not something.
Well, what type of care y'all have now, Rick A? What was the replacement?
That wasn't a partisan view. That was
Obamacare
or Democratic.
What was the replacement
to
make sure that everybody have health care?
Value and norm.
Because he said that Trump said he was going to replace it with something better. What was the replacement, Rick A?
I believe it continues to be that there has to be responses and pushback from civil society, from various institutions.
What was the replacement?
And individuals outside of government, but there also has
there was
to be
none,
people
right?
in government,
so he lied.
In both parties who say, well, no, you can't do that. You can't do that. And when what we're seeing right now is when you do not have those constraints and guardrails, right? When you don't have people inside of government who say, no, this is how the law works, and we should follow it.
He lied. He did not want everybody to have health care.
Democracy is not self-executing.
Because he wants it to be population control, so sick people would die out.
People in the Justice Department and people throughout the government who take an oath to uphold the Constitution. It requires them to take those.
Well, all you had to do was go through the marketplace to get some.
And when that
because it was set up for you to be able to get some. follow the rules.
We start.
You didn't follow the rules.
Into something that is not consistent.
Because you were
with
supposed to get
democracy.
health care.
It is consistent with autocracies. It's consistent with.
And if you could not afford it, all
Hungary
you had to
under
do
Orban.
was go through the marketplace.
It
was set up, but you did not follow the rules.
But
so you got fined.
Otherwise observe what we think of as a fair system in which everybody's voice matters and people have a seat at the table and there are checks and balances and nobody's above the law. And we're not there yet.
No, it wasn't what? It helped a lot of
but I
people.
think that
You was just the one who
we
chose
are,
not to get it. Not to get insurance.
we are dangerously close to normalizing behavior.
So there was consequences.
And we need people both outside government and inside of government saying,
You for whatever reason, you did not want to follow. Well, that's why you got fined $5,000.
because it's hard to recover. And part of the reason I think
y'all
it's
kill
interesting,
me.
when I was first
But Trump said he was going to put something in place better. Like I asked you, what was the replacement?
Global financial crisis.
He lied because
Started
there
on
was
Wall
none.
Street, so understandably, other countries were annoyed about it. And the Iraq War, obviously, it was not popular around the world. And so our reputation
Hi, Tracy.
and our leadership globally had dipped.
You not following the guidelines was whack.
And so
And
I
it
come
cost
in
you
first year, and I'm
$5,000.
doing a lot of travel and making a lot of speeches and holding town halls and like this in foreign countries. And one of the raps that I got from the opposition, the Republican side, was, he's on an apology tour. And basically what they were arguing was...
I don't want to keep going. Let that
just going
go.
around bullying other countries.
Let that
and
go.
telling
I'm going to time you out.
that we're better than
Because you
which
just
I
talking.
thought was a bad strategy to get them to cooperate to
Learn how to follow the rules.
That's human nature, I think.
And you won't get fined.
But what they always miss,
period,
and what I would always say everywhere I went around the world was what makes America exceptional.
You were one of them
is not
ones
that
who
it has
said,
the biggest
"Can
military,
nobody
it's
make
not
me?
that
Can nobody
it has the
make me?"
largest
Okay.
economy.
Okay.
What really makes America exceptional?
He can't make me. Okay.
That
I don't
it's the
think
only-
he can't. Okay.
Our reputation. Let's not.
There are consequences when you don't follow
that,
rules. Period.
That over that cliff, because it's hard to recover, and part of the reason I think it's interesting when I was first elected. We were in the middle of a huge global financial crisis. It had started on Wall Street, so understandably, other countries
I
were annoyed
agree,
about it.
Hannibal.
And
We got a big old
the
baby
Iraq War,
Huey in
obviously,
office
was
that
not
would
popular
temper
around the
tantrums.
world, and so our reputation and our leadership globally had dipped pretty significantly. And so I come in first year, and I'm doing a lot of travel and making a lot of speeches and holding town halls and like this in foreign countries. And one of the raps that I got from the opposition, the Republican side, was, he's on an apology tour. And basically what they were arguing was that I wasn't just going around bullying other countries and telling them that we're better than you, which I thought was a bad strategy to get them to cooperate to, I don't know, that's human nature, I think.
He always throwing temper tantrums,
what they always
crying and whining.
what I would
Every
always
time somebody find fault in
say,
what he does, he make excuses, start crying and whining
around the world
like a big old baby Huey.
What makes America exceptional is not that it has the biggest military. It's not that it has the largest economy. What really makes America exceptional is that it's the only big country on earth, and maybe the only real superpower in history, that is made up of people from every corner of the globe. And they show up, they come here, and the glue that holds us together.
I'm not giving you no example.
Is this crazy experiment called
Hit,
this idea
send a super chat, super
that
sticker.
we
You need to invest in me. I'm not gonna give you my damn intellect.
We don't
not for free, not
we
tonight.
don't,
Give my likes up.
worship God in the same way. We don't like the same foods.
I don't have to give you example. You watch him every damn day.
When this experiment works,
and on top of that, he a damn convicted criminal.
A bit of hope, because it says it is possible.
A convicted
for
criminal.
Human beings.
And half of the people who got felonies can't get no job.
But are instead bound by an idea.
Why he didn't lift that ban for y'all felons?
They can somehow.
Y'all can't even vote for him.
Arrive at a common good.
But he a president.
That's what made America.
Oh, okay.
And so I think we have to recover pride in that. That's what makes us special. That and our capacity.
What if Obama would have been a convicted felon? Y'all people would have had 50 million things to say.
An adherence to
if he had
certain ideas,
one felony, let alone 30.
The opposition, the Republican side, was he's on an apology tour. And basically,
don't talk to me about
I wasn't just going around bullying other countries and telling them that we're better than you.
So you okay with your president having a convicted felon of his peers?
That's human nature.
But other convicted fellas can't get jobs or housing.
What they always missed.
You don't see nothing wrong with that. I'm checking your integrity. I'm checking your integrity.
Around the world was.
I'm checking your answer the question.
It's not that it has.
How do you feel about that?
It's not that it has.
That's an integrity question.
What really makes
I want to check your integrity.
That it's the only big country on earth, and maybe the only real.
Okay, you're not gonna answer by
in history.
You're not gonna ignore me.
It is made up of people from.
You're not gonna ignore me. You gonna answer me, or you gonna get the fuck up out of here.
They come here, and
you don't have nothing else to say over here until you answer my question.
Us together is this crazy experiment called democracy, and this idea that
you're gonna try to check me and question me, but you can't answer me.
We don't look alike.
Hi, Victor.
We don't worship God in the same way. We don't like the same foods. And yet,
he should put that into an executive order. He should lift that for convicted felons, cause he's one.
Because it says it is possible for human beings who are not bound by tribe or race or blood, but are instead bound by an idea, that they can somehow work together and arrive at a common good. That's what made America exceptional. And so I think we have to recover pride in that.
Chatty, you wish you never voted for who?
That's what makes us special. That and our capacity through this constitutional process and representative government and an adherence to certain ideas has allowed us to get better. Not perfect, but get better over time. With just one big civil war, large exception. But otherwise, we've managed to make real
Imagine being a Trump lover. Laughing my
About
fucking
how
ass
the
off.
system has frayed since World War II.
He's a convicted felon.
World War II years, we've seen a lot of things falling apart.
Imagine
And there's
y'all
a lot of
falling
different
for
areas we
that.
can talk about, but what do you see as
Let the next
the
president
biggest areas
be a
in
convicted
which
felon.
we're
Y'all gonna
facing
have something to
challenges in the
say.
U.S., or that it's perhaps taken us to where we are now?
So some of these trends you could start seeing during the start of my presidency or before the start of my presidency. A couple of huge factors. I'm not being particularly original in saying this. The Berlin Wall comes down, Cold War's over. There's this period in the 90s in which the U.S. really doesn't have a competitor. And the combination of technology, transportation improvements.
Half of the people didn't even vote, Brian. They on here talking noise and didn't even vote.
Barriers.
They come up with 50
that
million
process
reasons
of
not to even
globalization
vote.
And technology.
I feel like anybody who gets any form of government assistance should be required to vote, and if they do not vote, they assistance get cut off. How dare you have something to say, but your ass don't vote?
In many ways, it was this extraordinary period of progress because you have 1 billion Chinese lifted out of poverty. That's a big deal. You have former Eastern Bloc countries who, places like Poland, or that suddenly are growing rapidly, and people's standards of living are rising. India, less so in Africa, but even there you're seeing progress.
Bye.
But there was
it's lost its sauce. Okay, bye.
Because this was all driven
never
by
return, boogeyman.
And
get your scary ass up out of here.
It created what
go back to jail.
Some economists refer to as a winner-take-all economy, in the sense that if you had high skills, you already had capital, you had advantages, you had education, you could leverage that and do even better. And if you didn't have those things, you could become redundant and marginalized. And that was happening not just between countries, but within countries. And so in advanced countries like the United States, economically wealthier countries, in absolute terms, people didn't get poorer, but the gap, the rise in inequality, made people feel like I'm losing ground. And this globalization was hugely disruptive. Right? So at first it happened in manufacturing, and that happens pretty early in the 70s and 80s, but then it starts happening in other industries and retail, and you get Walmart, and Walmart now suddenly has to deal with Amazon. And those economic dislocations and the capacity of some people to make $100 billion or more, and others not, and have trouble making the rent or feeding their families, that's created tensions. And if you combine that with a change in the information ecosystem brought on by the internet and then social media, and everybody carrying around this little thing in their pocket, what that also did was to
I bet you don't have a
know
TV.
How unequal everything was. Yeah, but many people know my father was from Kenya.
I bet you all you have is a jail
When I
cell
went there
TV.
for the first time in 1987, I mean, this is rural. There's no indoor plumbing in a lot of areas. There's no electricity. By the time I went back, and say the last time I was there, 2011, 12, I was probably 13. Everybody's got a cell phone. So you have people who are subsistence farmers looking at the Kardashians. And it's funny. It's a weird image. But what that does is it created both a collision of cultures. People started seeing how different others were living, and that's an assault on their identity and their status. And it also triggered all kinds of movement among peoples. The degree to which mass migration has been triggered, in part by the communications revolution, I think, is something that is not talked about enough. Because people started saying, oh, I can be here, and here's how I can organize moving to a better life. So you get this combination of things. Essentially what happens is people are feeling stressed from all sides. They feel stress in terms of their identity. They feel stressed economically. They feel stressed in terms of social arrangements and gender norms and marriage and all the institutions and religion, all the things they could count on as giving solid ground under their feet. Suddenly all that stuff feels up for grabs. And in that situation, it's harder to maintain the social trust that keeps democracy going. And so if you, long answer to what should have been a shorter, or to a good question that I should have responded to quicker.
In prison for what? Trump is the one that's the convicted felon. You talking about Trump?
A changed information and media environment, demographic change, those who used to be marginalized now wanting a seat at the table, all those things were disruptive and got people nervous, and there was a backlash. And that backlash increasingly took forms in which we don't care what we said about democracy. We want to make sure that we maintain the status quo. And that, I think, is part of what we're going through right now. And it's probably, the changes I just described are accelerating. I mean, if you ask me right now, the thing that is not talked about enough, but is coming to your neighborhood faster than you think, this AI revolution is not made up. It's not overhyped. You are already, they're probably, I know.
Yeah, y'all talking that noise now. When y'all are replaced, y'all jobs are replaced with AI. Don't blame nobody but Trump. When you can't get a job and a robot has your job, don't blame nobody but Trump.
These new AI models can do. And so that's going to be more disruption, and it's going to speed up, which is why one of the things I discovered as president is
Trump
most
and
of the
Elon
problems
Musk.
we face are not
Remember
simply
that.
technical problems. If we want to solve climate change, we probably do need some new battery technologies, and we need to make progress in terms of getting to zero emission carbons. But if we were organized right now, we could reduce our emissions.
Don't ask me no questions.
30%.
Put it on a super chat or super sticker if you want me to answer any questions. Do not ask me nothing, okay? Put it on a super chat or super sticker. And I'll be more than happy to answer that. I'm not answering nothing for free.
And it's probably...
How about that?
a changed information and media environment, demographic change, those who used to be marginalized now wanting a seat at the table, all those things.
Oh no, but what? I got money.
Got people nervous.
I got money.
And there was a backlash.
Honey. But you ain't getting nothing from me for free.
Took forms in which we don't care what we said about democracy.
I got money.
We want to make sure that we maintain the status quo.
And you're not gonna try to manipulate me like Trump done manipulated all them other people.
And it's
oh no, I don't play like that. I don't play like that.
The changes I just described are accelerating.
Hey, Amanda.
Right now, the thing that is not talked about enough, but is coming to your neighborhood faster than you think, this AI revolution is not made up. It's not overhyped. You are already, they're probably, I know, I was talking to some people backstage who are associated with businesses here in the Hartford community. I guarantee you, you're going to start seeing shifts in white-collar work as a consequence of what these new AI models can do. And so that's going to be more disruption, and it's going to speed up, which is why one of the things I discovered as president, is most of the problems we face are not simply technical problems. If we want to solve climate change, we probably do need some new battery technologies, and we need to make progress in terms of getting to zero emission carbons. But if we were organized, right now we could reduce our emissions by 30% with existing technologies. It'd be a big deal. But getting people organized to do that is hard. Most of the problems we have to do with how do we cooperate and work together. Not, do we have a 10-point plan or the absence of it. Public schools, we know how to teach kids effectively. But organizing school boards and making sure adequate funding is there and making sure that teachers can teach. And that's what's hard. So if you ask me right now what is our biggest challenge, I go back to what I talked about earlier. Our biggest challenge right now is we need democracy and social cohesion and trust more than ever. And it's probably as weak as it's been since I've been alive. And that's a bad combination. And so if we're going to fix all these other problems, if we're going to deal with climate change effectively, if we're going to deal with this AI revolution in a smart way, if we're going to address economic inequality, it is going to start with a reaffirmation of our ability to work collectively together. If we don't do that, then the other stuff is not going to get done.
So one of the, yeah, go ahead.
Yep. Work together effectively.
So one of the things you didn't mention about the accumulation of money into certain hands after the fall of the Berlin Wall and in the former Soviet republics and so on was the degree to which people who made that money took over the political systems to weight everything in their own favor. And one of the things that I think is interesting about cell phones, for example, I think you're absolutely right that people can now look at their cell phones and say, why don't I live like that? And it seems to me that in many ways they are a tool to push back against that loaded world, if you will, that has been so skewed toward a very small group of people. And we're really seeing that push come to shove right now under this particular administration.
It could be. Look, technologies are tools. But they're also not, I don't want to stretch the analogy too far, but they're also operating systems. They kind of move you in certain directions. I was jokingly talking about books previously, but books are an interesting technology because they force you to focus and concentrate your attention over a certain period of time, and that encourages you to consider a bunch of factors and to think about complexity and to reason things out. It creates certain habits of the mind. Tweets do something different. And look, I was the first digital president, so I saw the dawn of this and saw it unfold. In the book Audacity of Hope that I wrote right after I'd been elected to the Senate, so this is pre-presidency, I have a chapter that starts with me visiting the Google campus in Mountain View in 2005. And it is fascinating. I'm talking to Sergey and Larry, and you could already see the revolutionary potential of this. And then smartphones come out around 2010 and are associated with the Arab Spring and Tahrir Square, and there's this enormous optimism. And I myself was elected in part because of this digital revolution, because I was not the establishment candidate. I'm an upstart. And so I've got a bunch, and I can't even take credit for any of this. The reason I was an early adapter of digital technology and campaigning was because I could only afford to hire 20-something-year-olds. They were the only ones stupid enough to think that we could get me elected to anything. And so I'd come into the office and we'd have our little, Mac, and they'd say, oh, we set up a web page. I said, that's great. What is that? And then they'd kind of show it to me, and they say, look, you can click this button and people can volunteer. I said, really? And what does that button do? People can send you money. I said, no, really? It was great. I had nothing to do with it. But I was smart enough to get out of these kids' way. And let them do it. And so, but, I give credit, I take credit for that. The reason I'm saying all that is, what you said, Heather, is absolutely right. There is the promise of this connectivity being harnessed for good. What we have learned subsequently is that it can also be harnessed for bad. And it can be captured by authoritarian states. It can be captured by wealthy economic interests. And there is something that has happened in social media in particular, which is their business model shifted. Early on, the idea was, we just want to put a bunch of good information out there, and we're going to privilege accuracy as well as speed as sort of the most important thing that you're getting on this platform. And at some point, their business practices, they realized, if we're going to make money, maybe the fastest way for us to make money on these platforms is to sell ads. And once you needed to sell ads, then the most important thing was getting attention and keeping people engaged on these platforms. And it turned out that there's part of our reptilian brain that gets really attracted to, in addition to cat videos, it's attracted to anger. And it's attracted to resentment. And it's attracted to conspiracy theories. And it's attracted to those aspects of ourselves that react rather than try to think. And it also splinters and divides into these slots. And you go down different rabbit holes. And so
Okay.
what it's done is that we've lost a monoculture. We've lost everybody watching Walter Cronkite. We've lost everybody watching MASH or Mary Tyler Moore or All in the Family or Roots. We've lost everybody getting a Time magazine, and on the cover is this new novel or new novelist, and so everybody's got to read that book. And so it makes it more difficult now for us to find common ground. It makes it easier for demagogues to divide us. And start arguing that those people who do those things in those spots who don't look like us, they're after you and they're trying to get you. And
I
so
agree.
One of the most important challenges I think our democracy faces is how do we regain some common sense of truth. Not absolute truth, but rough, basic truth. In 2020, one person won the election, and it wasn't the guy complaining about it. And that's just a fact. That wasn't just like, my inauguration had more people.
Let's go.
I say that, by the way, not because, I don't care.
It's just facts.
But facts are important.
Facts.
Because if you can't, and I think one of the most pernicious things that has happened is we have a situation now where we're not just arguing policy or values or opinions, but
integrity or none of that
are being contested.
The facts are being contested.
And that is
I
a
agree.
problem.
People
Because
can't
then
stand
the
facts,
marketplace
baby.
of ideas of the democracy don't
They
work.
cannot.
I've said this before, but I always repeat it. You and I can have an opinion about this little side table. And, you might not like the design, you might not like the color or how it's finished. But we can have that discussion. If I say to you, this is a lawnmower, you'll think I'm crazy.
Yeah, I remember MASH.
And if I really believe it, I'll think you're crazy. And we're now in a situation in which we are having these
Don't
just
ask me
basic
to
factual arguments.
think of anybody's name, no.
And that further undermines trust. And those in power, those with money, exploit that space in which nobody knows what's true. Vladimir Putin and the KGB had a saying that was then adopted proudly by Steve Bannon, which was, if you want propaganda to be effective, you don't have to convince people that what you are saying is true. You just have to flood the zone with so much poop.
Right.
They use a different word, but you have to flood the
Lies.
zone with so much
untruth
constantly that at some point people don't believe anything. So it doesn't matter if a candidate running for office just is constantly, just hypothetically, saying untrue
Anything.
things.
Just lying.
Or if an elected president claims that he won when he lost and that the system was rigged. But then when he wins, then it isn't rigged.
That part.
Because he won. It doesn't matter if everybody believes it. It just matters if everybody starts kind of throwing up their hands and saying, well, I guess it doesn't matter. And that's what's happened. That's what's happened.
They believe the lie. They accept the lie. They justify the lie.
You have a whole bunch of people who know.
It's a whole bunch of people. Trump sound like Diddy to me.
Hypothetically, some point people don't believe anything. So it doesn't matter if a candidate running for office just is constantly, just hypothetically, saying untrue things. Or if an elected president claims that he won when he lost and that the system was rigged. But then when he wins, then it isn't rigged because he won. It doesn't matter if everybody believes it. It just matters if everybody starts kind of throwing up their hands and saying, well, I guess it doesn't matter. And that's what's happened. That's what's happened in one of our major political parties. You have a whole bunch of people who know that's not true, but we will pretend like it is.
Wow.
And that is dangerous.
It's very dangerous.
One of the things I think, Heather, you're doing, for those of you
very
who
dangerous.
Know her newsletter, and it's an example of, give you a little plug here.
Oh, I'm sorry.
But part of what we're going to have to do is to start experimenting with new forms of journalism and how do we use social media in ways that reaffirm facts, separate facts from opinion. We want
separate facts from feelings.
We don't want diversity of facts. And how do we train and teach our kids to distinguish between those things? That, I think, is one of the big tasks of social media. By the way, it will require some government, I believe, some government regulatory constraints around some of these business models in a way that's consistent with the First Amendment, but that also says, look, there is a difference between these platforms letting all voices be heard versus a business model that elevates the most hateful voices or the most polarizing voices or the most dangerous in the sense of inciting violence voices. And that I think is going to be a big challenge for all of us that we're going to have to undertake.
A couple of questions about that. How do you think we can rebuild a sense of shared national identity? And let me give you the other one because maybe they overlap.
Yeah.
We have a number of different sectors in this country who are now sort of banding together in the face of hostility. And what are their different roles in that project? And I'm thinking of universities and law firms and businesses, and you talked about media, but also about culture.
So, there is this great American story And it's like the Great American Songbook. There is a running thread through America, from Thomas Paine and George Washington to Thoreau and Emerson and Lincoln and Douglas and all the way through King and Kennedy's inaugural. There is the Whitman. There is a story about America that includes everybody. It's a good story. It's a story about people who. It's a story about people who aren't pretentious and don't believe that anybody is worse than them or better than them. That we're all endowed with a core dignity and are deserving of rights and respect, and have to assume responsibility for ourselves individually and our collective lives. We all play a part.
How to accept responsibility, Lord.
And that historically has not been I'm repeating myself here, it hasn't been a Republican or a Democratic idea. That is an American idea that everybody could tap into. And if that ends up being our starting point for a common identity, if our starting point is these homespun values of we don't have aristocracies here, we don't have rank, we don't have monarchies, we have rule of law, all people are equal in the eyes of the law, that we all have a part to play in democracy, that we all have to take individual responsibility for our lives, but we also have to, as Lincoln said, do some things together because we can do it better together than we can do it apart. If that's our starting point, then I think we'll be okay.
We can make it.
But that's not where we are right now.
Facts.
I think right now what we're seeing is a politics that is reasserting a bad story of America, which is that even if there aren't technically ranks, we like the idea of caste, and we like the idea of hierarchy. And some people, this is our country, the real Americans, and these other folks are the phony and the fake Americans, or not even American. And that story also has a deep history in this country, right? That says, okay, the first Americans aren't Americans, and slaves are not Americans, and women are sort of Americans as long as they're doing what their husbands say, and people of different sexual orientations, they're not, we don't even want to hear about them. That story has been part of America as well.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, people sometimes ask me what is my favorite, what is the favorite of the speeches I've given. And probably my favorite, and it will be a portion of it's on the face of the Presidential Center that we will be opening next year in Chicago, is the speech I gave in Selma for the 50th anniversary. And the reason I love that speech is because, to me, that contest on the Edmund Pettus Bridge is as important a battle as Concord and Lexington and Appomattox, because you have on one side, you have on one side John Lewis in a backpack and an apple and a toothbrush, and maids, and college students have flown down, and rabbis, and young priests, and they are carrying with them across that bridge this story, this better story, that we're all equal, we all have a place, nobody's worse, nobody's better, and we can all join together. And on the other side, you've got folks on horseback with billy clubs and guns and dogs, and they're carrying a different story, which is no. Ignore what we say in the Declaration of Independence. We have caste. And some people are better and more deserving than others and have more power and more wealth. And so I think we are, that question right now is being called. And you asked about universities, law firms, businesses. One of my bigger concerns is when I see institutions cower before this bad story because they're worried that it will affect their bottom lines in some fashion. And the question I've asked, because there have been partners in law firms who have called me and asked me about this, there have been university presidents who I've had conversations with about this, businesses who've asked me how they think they should handle this. And what I've said to them is, well, what do you believe? Like that's your starting point. What do you care about? What's your mission? If you believe, if you are a university, what is your core mission? And if as I think your core mission should be, it's to teach, to transmit knowledge and broaden horizons for young minds, and transmit information that allows them not just to get a job, but also to live meaningful lives and be good citizens. If that's your mission, then it really doesn't matter what the threats are coming in from the outside. You push back against somebody who says you can't carry out that mission. If you are a law firm, then obviously you're running a business, it's partnership, you're billing, you want clients, but you're also all supposed to be officers of the court. You went into the law presumably not just because you couldn't think of anything else to do, or your dad or your mom thought it was a good idea. Presumably you went into the law because you believe in the law.
Right.
So if you are getting pressure from government saying
break it,
ignore or fudge or compromise that commitment, you have to push back. Now, one thing that I've noticed, and I've said this before in a few other venues, Heather, you and I, we both grew up after the World War II, and America's, the colossus around the world, and we're exporting all these ideas, and our economy is growing, and terrible things have happened during our lifetimes. Vietnam, and assassinations, and killing fields, and Rwanda, and so I don't want to in any way minimize those things. But what's been fascinating about this period in our history, and it's anomalous, is that things got sort of steadily better. I mean, the world became hugely wealthier and healthier and better educated, and infant mortality dropped, and women and girls suddenly had access to education, and human rights became an idea that people violated but were guilty about. If you listen to sometimes like just Nixon, the Nixon tapes just talking about bombing Cambodia, crazy how indifferent they were in ways that were taken for granted then, and now, whatever differences I have with the Bush administration, they wouldn't have conversations like that, and that happened just in 20 years. So I think a lot of us started to take it for granted. And part of what happened was, if you were relatively privileged to have been grown up in the United States of America during this period, you could be as progressive and socially conscious as you wanted, and you did not have to pay a price. You could still make a lot of money, you could still hang out in, Aspen and Milan and travel and have a house in the Hamptons and still think of yourself as a progressive. And now things are a little different. Your commitments are being tested. Not the way Nelson Mandela's commitments were tested, where you go to jail for 27 years. You might lose some of your donors if you're a university. And if you're a law firm, your billings might drop a little bit, which means you cannot remodel that kitchen in your house in the Hamptons this summer. And if you're a business, and this has happened because I've been getting calls about it, yes, you may be threatened by an administration that says, we won't approve a merger, or we will launch an investigation of you, and we will make you uncomfortable. Part of what all this tariff stuff is about, by the way, because it's such such poorly thought out economics. So you kind of wonder, well, why would you do something that's just not well thought out? I mean,
Because they don't think out nothing.
There's a place for tariffs to help open up markets and leverage. The United States sometimes gets taken advantage of because we've been the biggest market. China in particular, as it came up, started taking advantage of the rules, and my administration applied tariffs as well, occasionally, to counteract these bad practices. But that's not what's going on now. What's going on now is that the tariffs means everybody has to come to you for favor. You apply blanket tariffs around the world, now suddenly Vietnam's got to negotiate tariffs, and would it be helpful in terms of lowering tariffs if maybe we approved a golf course for a certain business? All right, let's discuss that. So what's happening is that we now have a situation in which all of us are going to be tested in some way. And we are going to have to then decide what our commitments are. And it will be uncomfortable for a time. But that's how you know it's a commitment. Because you do it when it's hard.
Right.
Not just when it's easy. Not just when it's trendy. Not just when it's cool. You know? And I sometimes I feel as if during my presidency, I think a lot of people felt comfortable in righteousness because they didn't have to test it. And now you have to test it a little bit more.
President Obama, it has been a real pleasure. And I would like to end, if we can, on a note of hope.
Yes.
And that is, you know, I don't know if you all know that the President and Mrs. Obama have the Obama Foundation, which fosters the next generation of leaders. And I would love if you could tell us what advice you are giving those young scholars to enable them to be optimistic about their future and about the future, and maybe about our future.
Yes. I'm still optimistic. I'm still the hope guy. I am. But the thing is, look, part of the reason I'm hopeful is, as Heather mentioned, our foundation, the premise of it is that leaders are not just, they don't just pop up. That there is extraordinary talent in every community, in rural communities, and inner city neighborhoods. They're remarkable leaders in fancy Ivy League schools, but they're also amazing leaders who don't go to college and are organizing unions or organizing neighborhoods. And that's true not just in the United States, but around the world. And so our mission is to train this next generation of leaders, give them resources, ideas.
I thought that lady earlier said he ain't doing nothing in Chicago.
When I say young people, we've got programs that reach very young people, like My Brother's Keeper, targeting young men of color who historically, have been left out. Girls Opportunity Alliance that focuses on women and girls, making sure they have access to opportunity education around the world as well as here. But a lot of the leaders we're talking about are doctors who set up clinics in Appalachia to fight the opioid crisis, or clinics in sub-Saharan Africa to give women access to health care. It's human rights lawyers in Eastern Europe, and it's civil rights lawyers here in the United States. And we've got members of parliament and state legislators, but we also have activists and journalists and people who put on community theater. You watch these young people and it will make you optimistic, because the thing that I've seen is that better story of America is alive and well. And it's in the hearts and minds of people everywhere. But we're not giving it enough of an institutional base and support. And we're not fighting for that better story enough. And these kids are willing to be on the front lines fighting for it every day. And so where my optimism comes from, it's not blind optimism. I've said before, I don't think progress goes in a straight line. I think that there are times where you take 2 steps forward and you take 1 step back. There are times where you take 1 step forward and take 2 steps back. That's been true in the United States. It's been true around the world. But if we are willing to attach ourselves to that better story in our own individual lives, in our communities, in our businesses, in our law firms, universities, in our places of worship, then I think the good will win out. And I guess the thing that when I'm talking to these young people, though, they need to hear the most is it is important to be impatient with injustice and cruelty, and there's a healthy outrage that we should be exhibiting in terms of what's currently happening, both here and around the world. But if you want to deliver on change, then it's a game of addition, not subtraction, which means you have to find ways to make common ground with people who don't agree with you on everything, but agree with you on something. And
I agree with that.
we were talking about social media earlier. It's part of the reason why my favorite app, or I guess it wasn't an app, program, whatever it was, I don't know always the terminology, when we were running our campaign was Meetup. You remember Meetup? So young people, you do not remember Meetup. Some older people remember it. So it's you could send out information on it, but then attached to it would be, let's meet up. And you didn't stay in your cocoon on your phone. The phone prompted you to then actually meet people in the real world. And the reason I loved it was you'd get like the Idahoans for Obama. We didn't send a staff to Idaho because generally it was not going to vote for a Democrat, but we wanted to encourage volunteers, so they'd self-organize. They'd send out, let's meet in the church basement, and they'd all show up. And online, it sounds like they're all the same. And they agree on everything, and, you know, there's a certain type of person who's supporting Obama. And they show up, and it's like, you got what looks like a former Army colonel with a buzz cut and a flannel shirt. And then you got a young black woman with a nose ring. And then you've got a mom pushing a stroller coming in because she couldn't get a babysitter. And now they've got to have a conversation that doesn't just focus on we hate the other side or we don't like this or we don't. Actually, they now actually have to recognize, oh, part of being a community, part of learning from each other is even the people we agree with, we don't agree with 100% of the time. We have to, people are complicated and unique, and they have their own stories. That, I think, is a lot of what we work with our young folks, is fighting against this tendency to try to just pigeonhole everybody. And I think the left sometimes does it as much as the right, and it's part of what contributes sometimes to backlash. When the left starts being scolds and wanting absolute positions on things, and like you have to agree with me on everything, as opposed to, you know what, I'm not crazy about your position on X, but man, don't you agree on Y? Well, let's work on that for a while. That, I think, is where you start seeing hope, because what ends up happening is when people actually meet and they get to know each other and then they work on a common endeavor, then that, what Lincoln called those better angels come out. People start recognizing themselves in each other, and they start trusting each other. And that's not just the basis for democracy, but that's the basis for
Hi, Rick A.
long-term salvation. So, all right, that was fun. Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate you connecting.
I've listened to Vance. I listened to Vance. I listened to Sanders, and I listened to Obama. What are you talking about, Rick A? I listened to all of them. Thank you, Lori. So how dare you come and insult me? I listened to Vance first. Then I listened to Sanders. Yeah, but still. Okay, y'all have a good night. Good night.